Yes, Zach.
Yes, there we go.
Awesome. Thanks. Appreciate everyone joining today. I know we're a little behind, well, quite a bit behind, but appreciate you hopping on and really excited to talk with you folks and introduce myself, introduce a little bit about what we've been working on here at Sologenic. And so maybe Zach, could you kick things off for us if you don't mind?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, just want to thank everybody for hopping on. Can you hear me okay, Mike?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. So today is just a little bit of a kickoff for our spaces that we will be doing moving forward. Mike here is our head of strategic partnerships at Sologenic. So he is heading up a lot of our institutional introductions and, of course, partnerships. I myself am Zach and am heading up the digital marketing efforts over here. So thank you everybody for joining. This is going to be exciting, definitely cool stuff. Mike, you want to give a little bit of an introduction yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks again, Zach. Thanks for the team for joining here. So yeah, appreciate it. I joined Sologenic just a few months ago as the head of strategic partnerships. And as Zach mentioned, I'll be leading the institutional arm of our business. I spent most of my career at Fidelity Investments, where I held a number of different sales and business development roles, selling a variety of products and solutions to institutions. My last role at Fidelity was actually part of a uh, fintech startup business that was, basically formed to sell a fintech solution to institutions. And I was brought on as the first salesperson to really build out the product, build out the sales process and infrastructure, and launch an entirely new business within Fidelity. Since then, I've held a number of other business development and partnership roles at a couple other fintech organizations. One of my most recent roles was as VP of Sales at a mobile banking company, where I was responsible for building partnerships and selling to financial institutions. I was also responsible for enhancing our product and our sales process, and ultimately was in charge of growing revenue for the business. And then most recently, I was head of partnerships at a fintech organization. It's sort of an accelerator program for fintech startups. And my role was to build partnerships with financial institutions that are looking to sort of keep their pulse on innovation happening in the fintech space. And so I was really able to build out my network with a number of folks who are leading digital innovation at their respective financial institutions. While at this fintech organization, I was able to meet many fintech startups really on a weekly basis. And what I was finding is that some of the most innovative startups were the ones that were building blockchain and crypto businesses.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of payment startups, lending startups, wealth tech, you name it. But I really felt as though the blockchain companies were the ones that were building revolutionary technologies that could really transform financial services. And so, because of that, I started learning more about blockchain and getting involved in the community. I ended up getting a blockchain certification from MIT, which was very helpful. I also got involved in the Boston Blockchain Association. It's a really strong community of institutions and blockchain companies in the Northeast U.S. And eventually, I ended up meeting the Sologenic team and learned about what they're working on, and we are working on related to institutional tokenization. And I came on board just a few months ago.
Very cool.
Um, yeah, and I mean, I think this is all really relevant because of what we're seeing now in terms of a convergence of traditional finance and the digital asset space. We have an extremely strong team here at Sologenic, and we are led by our co-founders, Bob Raz and Reza Bashash, who they have previously founded and exited companies in the past. And so having strong founders is definitely a key piece with any startup or even mature company. Additionally, another big factor in terms of potential success of Sologenic is that we are self-funded. I think that's a really big factor.
Huge
Uh,
factor.
I'm, yeah, I'm coming from an environment where I saw many startups that had great potential, but they could not secure enough funding to gain traction. And so
Yeah.
that's really not a factor for us here at Sologenic.
Yeah.
And so
Or even the funding they did receive was, of course, by VCs who are holding their token. And of course, VCs need to make their money. So that inevitable token dump happens, right?
exactly. Um, and so, I think that we are really able to build the right way and to look long term at what we're hoping to accomplish. And then the last piece that I think we should definitely highlight is that we're building the right team. Our team has a diverse set of skill sets and diverse backgrounds that I believe really complement one another. We have folks who have been working in the crypto space for many years. We also have folks like myself who come from a more traditional finance and fintech background. And Zach, you and I both know that the Sologenic team is continually adding folks to help improve success.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I know we you kind of mentioned it before, but just for everybody that's sort of new to Sologenic and kind of what institutional tokenization is, can you explain that a bit more? Like what is tokenization and how does that future of tokenization kind of look like, just so that everybody can kind of get an understanding of what we really are after?
Yeah, absolutely. So tokenization is somewhat of a newer concept, although the Sologenic team identified it as an opportunity a while back. I'd say probably before most in the industry. But tokenization really is taking a real world asset, whether it's a currency or real estate or even stocks and ETFs or
Mm-hmm.
other financial instruments, and converting them to a digital representation on the blockchain, which ultimately can open up a whole range of possibilities. So I guess as an example, if you were to take real estate and you think about how illiquid of an asset it is and how many steps and how many stakeholders are involved, if you wanted to invest in a piece of real estate, you start to realize that it's a quite a lengthy process with many middlemen, contracts involved, number of steps in the process.
Mm-hmm.
Now, imagine a situation where that same ownership in that same piece of real estate, rather than signing contracts and working with lawyers and realtors, you can instead invest and trade ownership as easily as you can any other digital asset. So ultimately, the real estate could be tokenized and given that digital wrapper,
Wow.
so that ownership is represented on the blockchain rather than on paperwork in a lawyer's office, right?
Mm-hmm. So cool. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So by tokenizing it, you've now taken this illiquid asset and you've made it a liquid asset, while also increasing efficiency and decreasing costs. Now, the same can be said for other assets like stocks and ETFs. Even though these assets are already pretty liquid and can be traded fairly easily, there's still a lot of restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
So, as an investor, I still can't trade my Tesla stock
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
directly to another investor on the opposite side of the world. Um, Trades can still take days to settle, and you can only trade during market hours. And so, by tokenizing these real world assets, such as stocks and ETFs, you can open up a whole new markets and introduce investment opportunities to folks who otherwise wouldn't be able to invest in those assets. And so, if you think about it, you can envision a world where people are trading and investing 24/7 across borders, across asset classes. It really opens up many opportunities. And I
So
guess kind of on that same vein, when you think about the future that this has, the future of tokenization, there's a number of studies that have come out recently that project the tokenization market to grow exponentially in just a few years. McKinsey projects that roughly $5 trillion of securities will be digitized by 2030. So $5 trillion of, whatever asset class you look at, they're projecting, and the very reputable consulting firm, McKinsey, is projecting it's going to be a $5 trillion industry by 2030. In addition to that, Boston Consulting Group is projecting it to be a $16 trillion industry by 2030, representing roughly 10% of global GDP. So really, huge numbers and huge growth potential in just a few years.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
No, I think it's interesting to think about, and one way that I like to think about it, and the future that I would like to see is, when will I be able to, take my tokenized equity and pay for my coffee in the morning with it, right? Like, that's the kind of liquidity we want tokenization to bring, where you have these assets that are there that aren't traditionally liquid, right? But Sologenic and sort of the institutions we're working with, that's sort of a future that people can imagine, right? Where
Exactly.
one asset that is traditionally has nothing to do with an asset can become so liquid that they're now interchangeable, and there's a market for it. So I think that's a really interesting way to sort of also break it down into everyday sort of situations for the consumer, right?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback on that, there's a quote I saw recently. It was from the CEO, or excuse me, former CEO of IBM, Ginny Rometty. I think it was back in 2017. And she said something that I think sort of summarizes what kind of growth we're going to see. And she said that she thinks that what the internet did for communications, blockchain is going to do for trusted transactions. And so, I think we're certainly seeing the beginnings of that. But personally, and this is just me speaking, I believe that tokenization is really what's going to take digital assets and blockchain to the next level.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. And it really does speak to what we're doing as a company, breaking down these barriers and using the blockchain for, it's necessary, and giving utility. Really, it's that, transparency and trust of transactions.
Exactly.
And I know that you spoke about it in the past and with your past work. But what financial institutions are getting involved in tokenization and these digital assets?
Yeah, well, there's a lot. And I think more and more are getting involved in the space, weekly, although it is still very early stages. What I think you're going to find is some of the leading financial institutions, companies like Fidelity Investments, BlackRock, JP Morgan, and others. They're going to have sort of a first mover advantage because they understand that innovation is really what keeps them at the forefront of the industry. But then, even though there are many financial institutions getting involved in digital assets, not many have really figured out tokenization just yet. There are a number of them that have sort of run pilot programs and are bringing on their first clients related to tokenization. But I'd say there aren't really any clear winners just yet. I took some notes here in terms of some of the companies that I was reading about recently. One example is JP Morgan. They recently launched a tokenization platform, and their first client was BlackRock. And ultimately, what they did is they tokenized shares of a money market fund so that they could process and settle transactions essentially instantaneously, whereas traditionally it takes a lot longer than that. I also saw that the CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink, he recently came out and said that the company is exploring the tokenization of traditional assets like stocks and bonds, something that we're working on as well. Other companies like Citibank, so they recently rolled out a service that allows clients to tokenize deposits that can then be sent anywhere in the world instantly. So you think about payments and what that opens up in terms of global cross-border payments. It's a whole new era that we're facing here. And then sort of, similar to that in terms of tokenizing currency. So MasterCard has rolled out a CBDC program, and something like 90% of central banks are exploring CBDCs, which, it's essentially the tokenization of currency, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Huge.
yeah, and then just to kind of highlight some of the other institutions that are getting involved, I was actually at an event recently that was hosted by the Boston Blockchain Association and companies like Fidelity Investments, State Street, Deloitte, a number of others presented their perspectives on digital assets and tokenization. There were a couple really important key takeaways that I found very interesting and I happen to agree with. Number one, the first one is that the growth of institutional adoption of digital assets and tokenization, it's not going to be linear growth,
Mm.
right? Right now, you're seeing some of the larger financial institutions getting involved, but from the outside looking in, that growth seems quite slow. What you're going to see, based on what I heard and what I agree with, is that it's going to be a bit more of a hockey stick trajectory where more and more institutions are getting involved. And then you sort of see this exponential growth where these financial institutions are seeing the benefits of blockchain technology.
Mm.
And then the second really key takeaway that I learned that I thought was important is that there's going to be an inflection point in the not too distant future where there are more assets on chain than there are off chain. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's an incredible thing to think about, right?
Yeah.
You're seeing the beginnings of it with JP Morgan and BlackRock, but eventually most financial institutions will be deploying similar tokenization solutions. And so that's where Sologenic will come in.
Yeah. I think that was kind of something that I wanted to get into as well was how does this fit into sort of Sologenic's entire, business model, and how does it pertain to what Sologenic's doing currently?
Yeah, so there's really two different ways that we're looking at our business model for this institutional arm. Number one, and really first and foremost, we are a technology business. I know we have our digital asset ecosystem, but at the end of the day, we have a strong team of developers, and we've built a tokenization engine and solutions that can be customized and white labeled to financial institutions who want to tokenize real world assets. And so we're in talks with a number of different entities and financial institutions that are looking to partner
Mm-hmm.
with a company like Sologenic to help them facilitate tokenization rather than them try to build it themselves in-house, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so as a technology partner, we're in a position where we can partner with these institutions, real estate companies, government jurisdictions that are rolling out digital currencies, or really any other entity looking to tokenize real world assets. We can definitely partner with them and be their technology provider. And then secondly, the other aspect of our business that I've been heavily involved in since I joined just 3 months ago is actually pursuing our own securities license. So that we can essentially act as a broker and give customers the ability to tokenize and eventually trade real world assets such as stocks and ETFs. Um, I'm sure and the audience knows there's definitely some regulatory hurdles involved in this process, but I'll be completely frank, we are making some really good progress. We're
Yeah.
looking to launch a pilot program fairly soon. We're I'd say towards the end of that process, and so more to come on that. And then this pilot program is really going to be so that we can learn and continue to build out our technology, our solution, and eventually launch on a much broader scale. But in the short term, our focus is going to be on building and launching that pilot.
Awesome. Yeah. There's so much cool stuff in the works that I wish we could just share with everybody, but in due time we will make it all known. And there's of course a lot of very exciting things going on with XRPL, various amendments and proposals that will do a ton for kind of everything we're sort of seeking to achieve here. But this is awesome. This has been great. I don't want to, drag this out too long. Thank you everybody for coming. But do you have any closing remarks or thoughts moving forward?
Yeah, so I think ultimately our team and Sologenic is in a really good position to capture a big portion of the tokenization market. I believe we have the right team, the right vision, the funding, the network, and definitely the partners. We're putting a lot of pieces in place to ultimately be a big player in the tokenization space. If if Boston Consulting Group is right, or even partially right, and this ends up being a $16 trillion market, then we're certainly going to continue to position ourselves to capture as much of that growth as possible. But yeah, really appreciate everyone joining, and again, apologize for the late start. We are definitely going to do this again soon, and so hopefully we will see you all again.
Yeah, thank you everybody for coming. And next time we will carve out some more time and open it up to questions from the community. This was just really sort of a test moving forward to see how we will operate. But I can see now we have a few people requesting questions, which is great. But I ask that you all hold on to those for next time. But yeah, thank you, Mike. This has been awesome. If anybody has any questions or would like to get involved, please reach out in our Discord or in our Telegram channels. But yeah, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it, Mike.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Zach.
Cheers.
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.